Do you really?
No.
I listened to the last episode.
That's great. Now we're live, so shut up.
Oh, okay.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to the Front Row Movie Reviews, the podcast for people who actually like movies and TV. And welcome to episode 10 of Discovering Star Trek. As we mentioned earlier last week, Discovery is on a bit of hiatus until January 7th. And we decided to have a few bonus shows, or whatever you want to call them, to kind of fill the gap. And today, we're going to be talking about the other Star Trek show on TV, and some, including myself, would argue the superior Star Trek show on TV, and I think we'll have a discussion about that. Although Craig hasn't watched Discovery, so he has no opinion on that. But I am Scott, and with me tonight is...
Mike?
And?
Hi, I'm Craig.
Hi, Craig. Craig's actually watched the show, unlike Discovery, so he actually can join us.
Hey, actually, I just caught up on Discovery, and I didn't know you guys were doing this show because I thought you were going to analyze Star Trek, and there hasn't been a Star Trek show you've talked about yet until tonight.
There it is.
It only took him a few seconds to bash it. We've had this.
No, I decided I'm not going to be deathly negative about the spore drive or whatever the hell that is, and Anthony Rapp getting new color contacts at the end of that last episode. Instead, I'm going to be very positive about Seth McFarlane's Orville, which was just renewed for a season 2, and I'm very, very glad about that because to me, being a Next Generation fan, you could tell that had they put Discovery in Seth MacFarlane's hands, it would be a much better show.
Well, and I will give you the spore drive because I don't understand to this day how starships run on mushrooms.
Now, I do agree with you guys. I mean, this is kind of spoilery for if you didn't listen to their last episode, but the predictions about it being a parallel universe and all that. I mean, maybe they just decided they're going to blow up this first season of Discovery and actually make a Star Trek show. That's kind of what I was thinking about, like, because the continuity is all screwed up. They have no sense of the fact that they're 10 years before the TOS. It's just like, it blows my mind. But I decided that they're 9 episodes in, and they decided they need to completely reset everything. And so that's why they're going to this parallel universe. And it's going to be like Earth 2 in The Flash.
Hey, Earth 2 was actually a good TV show, and it got canceled after like 13
where I
episodes.
thought he was going with that for a second.
It had the guy from Stargate Universe in it, right? No, maybe not.
Yeah.
The older guy, who is also Rumpelstiltskin. Maybe. Maybe not.
Really?
Maybe not.
Crap.
Maybe not.
Hold
I'm just
on.
making that up now. But
The internet.
Craig threw a lot in there, so let me rewind a bit. I was agreeing with you on the spore drive and the fact that the mushroom drive doesn't make sense, and it still doesn't. But the colored contacts, we had colored contacts in the second pilot of TOS, sir. So Star Trek has always been about colored contacts, which, again, one of our predictions that came from Blake originally, I'm kind of backing him on it now, is the same thing that's happening to Stamets, Anthony Rapp's character, is happened to Gary Mitchell back in TOS. So I think the colored contacts are saying something there. But I agree with the spore drive thing. You've also mentioned that Orville was picked up for a season 2. Funny that Orville was picked up for a season 2, and less than a week later, CBS said, "Oh yeah, us too. We're going for a season 2 as well." So I truly think that CBS is watching how the Orville is doing and wishing that they could be doing as well. So we're going to go ahead and start talking a little bit about this show. And if you're in the chat room, Creeper, I see you because you're always there, like the creeper that you are. If you're in the chat room, chime in too. Let us know what you think as we go along as well. Guys, let's go ahead and kind of follow the format that we usually follow to an extent, and let's talk about first impressions. So let's talk about your thoughts on the Orville as you first saw it with the pilot and going on into the season. And also, for those listening and watching, we will be spoiling the first 10 episodes
I think
of
it's
the
like
Orville.
8.
I thought it was 9.
I think it may be 9. Now that I think about
no,
it.
you're right.
Oh,
No,
no,
10.
no, you're right.
No, 10.
It is 10. It is 10 because Garmin
Firestorm
was
was
in
on.
9.
Yep.
Yeah, Firestorm was on Thursday, and so we have not seen the last 2 episodes of the season, which will start airing a week and a half from now after Thanksgiving. So let's go to Mike and kind of get your first impressions.
Boy, my first impression of the Orville was real mixed. It was the first episode was a weird show. I found it to be really charming. It felt so much like TNG that it was ridiculous in a lot of ways. And yet one of my biggest problems, even ongoing, has been the injection of Seth McFarlane humor, which I will say has gotten better as the season has gone on, but boy, in the early episode, did it ever feel just super out of place with what felt like a show that couldn't decide whether it was a comedy, a parody, or a straight-laced Star Trek clone. And I think you've heard me mention several times throughout our other podcasts as I've been watching Orville and Discovery in parallel. I really like the show, and I'm going to look at the episode list here really quick. Quite honestly, I feel like it's gotten better every episode so far, just about anyway. There are definitely some standouts in my mind, like the Krill episode. I actually thought the episode Firestorm from last week was probably the best one so far. So it's really won me over. It gone from being this like weird show that I didn't quite know what to make of, but still kind of liked it, to like I just kind of flat out unabashedly really enjoy it, and I'm excited to see it keep going.
Craig, you gave us a little bit of your first impressions already, but go ahead and keep going.
I would agree with Mike that the first episode was a little heavy-handed as far as, and the humor just wasn't landing for me as well. I don't know if that was the writers trying to get too much into the storyline and trying to give you the background of all these characters or what was going on. But after that, really, to me, like I had to get through the first episode. And usually with any TV show, you got to give it a couple of episodes. I mean, Discovery, you got to give it at least 9, so before it starts getting good. So, you know, with that, you know, I think it started getting good about the second or third episode is when I really started enjoying it. And it does have a lot of dick and fart jokes. I mean, that's Seth MacFarlane's thing. But what is also his thing is the elongated shots and the ridiculous amount of time spent trying to get you to laugh at a particular joke. And he hasn't really done that yet in Orville that I remember. Because that's the thing that, like, everybody loves Family Guy and American Dad for those types of shots. But with me, like, that's the humor that's lost on me. Like, I get it. It was funny 10 seconds ago. Move on. And so I was kind of worried that he was going to have a lot of that in this as well. And to me, that hasn't happened as much as I anticipated it, if at all. And I also think it's just got, you know, it's got a soul. It's got a heart to it. There's a lot of really interesting, really deep conversations that go on. Look at the episode about like basically gender mutilation. You know, it was like the 3rd or 4th episode of this show, and talking about how is it ethical to change another species' core beliefs and values, weighing that against your own. It was just it was all wrapped in, again, dick and fart jokes, but it was like that had a moral center to it that I think is lacking in a lot of TV today. So I really have enjoyed it. I'm glad it's renewed for a season 2, and I'm glad that Fox gave him the ability to do the show. I mean, he's made them how much money now that he probably has a little bit of street cred over there.
Yeah, I agree with you on the humor, and I think it has actually toned down quite a bit. I mean, and some of it I'm good with, like Isaac asking what a dick is, as in, you know, don't be a dick. I find that funny. Isaac, and basically everything with Isaac I find funny. So walking in with a Mr. Potato Head on his head, that was amazingly funny for me. But I agree with you that I think McFarlane has done well in not doing his kind of long-winded humor that he does. The best example I can give you is Peter Griffin, where he gets kicked in the shin or something, and for literally 2 or 3 minutes, he's just doing the that kind of stuff just drives me insane, and I'm glad that they haven't done that here. But
I hope that they don't.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're going to. I think my assumption is, because McFarlane is a huge sci-fi fan, Star Trek fan, but also a space fan. We got Cosmos with the new Cosmos because Seth MacFarlane pushed it. Seth MacFarlane and Brandon Braga. And I'm pretty sure the idea for Orville probably came around when they were talking about Cosmos a few years ago, because now Brandon Braga and Seth MacFarlane are running this show. And say what you will about Brandon Braga, I think he can do okay when he has a good writer's room behind him. And I think he directed Firestorm last week. So I think when he's not doing Voyager or seventh season of TNG, he's doing okay. But I can almost envision McFarlane going to CBS and saying, I have a Star Trek show that I want to tell. It's going to be in the vein of TNG, which we know sells because TNG is the most popular of the Star Trek shows. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do a Star Trek show the way it should be done. CBS, being stupid, said no. And so then he went to Fox, who has his contract, and said, okay, I'm going to do one of my shows, because Fox wasn't going to go for a Star Trek show or a space opera. So because we've seen what they've done with those in the past. So Fox is like, well, if you put dick jokes in it, we'll go with it. So he did. And the pilot has a lot of dick and fart jokes. But as he started getting into the realm where Fox was seeing that he had something and that he's not going to screw around with it, he's been able to kind of take that back a little bit. And there's still going to be, at the core of the show, humor. But I agree with you, Craig, that this show is taking more chances than Discovery is. Discovery is supposed to be the dark show, but my biggest example of how they did not pull the trigger when they should have is Saru. And I complained about this last episode, is Saru basically committed mutiny. He went against the orders of both his commanding officer and the entire Starfleet. He put his crew, he put the Federation at risk, and the next episode he's on the bridge. Like nothing ever happened. But in this show, Orville,
Lorca,
yeah, go
Lorca,
ahead.
He last episode he was ordered to report to Starbase 46, and then he goes back and he jumps back in and ends up like destroying the dead ship or whatever. But at the same time, he disobeyed a direct order.
Yeah.
And then they're giving it an accommodation at the end of the episode. Like not even like a stern, hey bro, this doesn't work. Like, you still got to listen to me. It's the same admiral basically kissing his feet. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No,
It's that general
I didn't mean to interrupt.
consequences that we talked about in that last episode.
Yeah.
And
Anyway,
I didn't
sorry.
mention this when we were reviewing that episode last week, but I almost think that the medal thing was a ruse to get him back to Starfleet and say, hey, we're gonna pat you on the back as we put shackles on you. Which I think Lorca felt the same
at the end.
Yeah. I think Lorca felt the same way, because that's why he sent them to the Mirror Universe, because he didn't want to go back, because he knew his girlfriend was back there ready to court-martial him. But so you're right, but Lorca has gotten away with many things. Lorca killed his entire crew instead of letting them be captured by the Klingons, and he's still commanding a starship, the most important starship in the fleet.
I mean, I think you can
That's
sum
true.
it up by
Sorry,
saying,
wrong show.
But no, I'm doing the comparison too. I agree with you, because what I would say is Orville has done a couple times where they don't pull punches.
Yeah.
When you're watching the episode with the baby and they're talking about changing its gender, you knew that wasn't going to happen. You knew at the end of the day they were going to win the court case and the kid was going to be a daughter. They didn't do that. They went for it.
Well, and the episode didn't necessarily end on a happy note.
No, it didn't.
It kind of just ended, and you're like, well, shit.
Yeah. And
I don't mind the serialized show, but I like that this has those common threads throughout. But if I miss a week, I'm not way behind. But you see his mate come up later on, and he's talking about how they haven't really communicated since then, like how they're having like all this quote unquote marital strife between the two of them, because still going back to that further episode. So it's still tying little bits and pieces in as we go.
There's still serialization. It's just not.
Yeah, the baby's shown up a couple
times.
The
overall
too.
Story.
Yeah. And as much as going back to those two, and now I'm blanking on his name because I am doing a show, so of course I forgot.
Oh my gosh, I'm terrible.
And,
Portis,
Portis and Clyden.
Yeah, so we heard how Anthony Rapp was gonna, and I'm bashing on Discovery, but I'm sorry because Discovery disappoints me in so many ways. We heard that Anthony Rapp was going to be the first major gay character on Star Trek, which we've seen a little bit. We've gotten more of a gay relationship from Bortus and his partner than we have from the other guys.
Or from Mercer and God, I forgot
Rob Lowe.
Rob Lowe's character, Derulio.
Yeah.
Everyone's hot
Jason
for Rob
Derulio,
Lowe.
right?
Everyone's hot for Rob Lowe.
Hey, one other thing I want to mention, just throw out there in case I forget it, but I love that he is showing respect to Star Trek. I don't know, and I think it's only been one episode because I only noticed it once, but I texted you right away. It was like the third or fourth episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes.
Yeah.
And that's awesome to me. Like, you've got Riker directing an episode of Orville. And,
and Jonathan Frakes is going to direct the next episode of Discovery, too, but I agree with you.
Okay. Well, fair. Well, at least he's getting work.
But they're doing a lot of homages that are, Robert Picardo was just in the last episode.
Yeah.
So Discovery, I'm not saying Discovery should beat us over the head with having cameos from other actors, but you're right. Orville is being more respectful to Star Trek than Star Trek is. And the biggest one is they've got Penny Johnson-Gerald on the main cast. She plays Claire, the Doctor. She was Sisko's wife on DS9 for a good 4 or 5 seasons. She was a major part of the show. So they have a main cast member from Star Trek on the main cast here. And the pedigree of this show, it just feels like a Star Trek show. I think the key thing here is McFarlane isn't afraid to do that. I think Discovery is scared to be Star Trek, much like Enterprise was scared to be Star Trek.
They went for Hollywood, the Hollywood definition of a dark, serious show, whereas Orville just went guns blazing towards the very core of Star Trek, which is exploring society.
Well, and go ahead.
Sorry, I keep jumping in, but my biggest beef with Discovery all along, and I have expressed this to you, might have been 9 weeks ago, but the fact that it is set in the past, because it almost seemed like CBS was saying, well, if we set it in the past, then we don't have to worry about it screwing up anything. Like, I get that, like, Enterprise, it was a cool concept. You got Scott Bakula quantum leaping into the Enterprise before it's the Enterprise. And then but like, why not move the ball forward if you're CBS and you own this property? Because then you could do little things that could tie things in, like having Quark show up or something. Like, you could do things that would allow for that continuity. And also, I just think that the executives were scared that this thing wasn't going to work. And I get that they're trying to launch a brand new streaming service and all that. But I really don't like that it's set in the past. And now maybe the parallel universe is going to fix that. I don't know.
Yeah. And there was an interview that happened last week. And it was one of the showrunners. I don't think it was Kurtzman, but it was one of the showrunners. And they were asked, why did you make it a prequel? And they flat out said that they didn't want to deal with the continuity. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but they said if they would have gone 100 years past Voyager or whatever, they would have been straddled with all of that continuity from the past 5 shows or 6 shows. So doing it this way, they only have to tie in with TOS within 10 years, so they've got time to do that.
Make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't at all. The other argument they said was it was hard for them to imagine what society would look like another 100 years, so the 25th century, which just tells me your writer's room sucks. because if you can't get some good science fiction minds in there who can imagine what the 24 and 2500s look like, get somebody else. I mean, my favorite author of all time, Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote the Space Odyssey books. Everyone knows him for 2001, but he went 1,000 years after that and wrote 3001, and it makes sense. There's diamond cities in the sky and such.
Well,
so if you can't figure out what 2500 looks like, get yourself a new job.
Well, it's not like the society that we're seeing in the time frame of Discovery is necessarily all that familiar or reminiscent to what we're living in right now either. I mean, to me, it's almost a matter of what's the difference between when Discovery takes place and 100 years past TNG. And I mean, seriously, like, I think it all comes down to the fact that if they do something in the distant future, at the end of all the other continuity, it's not necessarily that they're strapped to any of that, because let's face it, they can choose to ignore whatever the hell they want. It's that they have to be creative and do something different.
Yeah.
I lost the
crutch.
I turned off my earbuds. Is this a bit better?
It's perfect now.
You sound better, yeah.
All right, good. I forgot my actual earbuds, so I was trying to use my Beats. Thanks, Dr. Dre. So basically, I don't want to continue to bash on this particular show, but it's just one of those where I wish that I was hoping for something so much more, and it wants to have its cake and eat it too, where it's going to be set 10 years in the past, but the uniforms are going to be super cool, and there's going to be this ridiculous technology that's never been mentioned before in any other Trek. So you're going to have to, like Blake said, Men in Black 'em soon, and Tommy Lee Jones is going to show up with a memory wipe. That kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. Mike brought it. So anyway, that's my gripiness. I haven't been on your Discovery show, so I really wanted to get that off my chest. But now, I know we're kind of still on first impressions, but I love.
Not really. No, we're not.
Orville is. It's a show that I really like to follow along, and it's one of those that every episode has been just a little bit different, and that's the nice part about having those little vignette episodes where you could have one where Pennywise shows up, and it makes a little bit of sense, right?
A little bit.
And actually, it didn't even look like Pennywise. Jeremy would like this. It looked like the what's the Gusher guy from Are You Afraid of the Dark? That's who I thought of.
It looked like a killer clown from outer space when he had those things going too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Too.
But I can see the Are You Afraid of the Dark piece too. But so okay, let's move on. We've bashed enough, I think, because I'm going to get nailed in the comments about this. John, I'm looking at you. But it's not that I don't like Discovery. It's just I expect more from a Star Trek show, and the fact that it's getting shown up by a Seth MacFarlane show, it's not good. Well, let's go ahead and talk about some of the things we like about this. So let's just talk about some of our favorite pieces, or I can't even explain what I'm trying to get for here, but just what do you like about the show in general? You can talk about episodes, characters, plot lines. I
like Ed Mercer a lot. I like the character that he's written himself, because he's a very vulnerable captain. He's no Jean-Luc Picard. He's no Benjamin Sisko, no James T. Kirk. He's kind of an amalgamation of trying to be all of them, but also failing at it. And I like that. I like that he is very human and makes really big mistakes and ends up, just like the others, getting near mated by Rob Lowe. I just really enjoy that. He wrote a good character for himself to play, and he leads the cast, obviously, and that's what establishes the foundation of the show for me, is that Ed Mercer is a very likable and sometimes at times ignorant and naive captain.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I want to jump in there too, because I totally agree. I think when the show started, and again, it was all much heavier in the lowbrow type of humor, and of course they played up the premise of his first officer is his ex-wife and their relationship, and it's one of these things where I'm getting a little bit tired of that still coming up 10 episodes in, but it's kind of like an integral part of the show.
Well, they just flipped it on its head, like at the very end of the second to last episode.
Yes, they did, and I'm sure that's going to come back later, just because that's the caliber this show seems to be.
Yeah.
But I absolutely agree with you in that they started off portraying Ed Mercer as this kind of like, oh, he was this really promising guy whose like life got flipped upside down, and he kind of like lost his way. And gradually, as the series has progressed, you started to see him come into his own, like getting his groove back, and he stumbled and tripped along the way. But the very last episode, Firestorm, when he sits down with Alara, and he's trying to like coach her through her like thing that happened, that was some of the realest shit I've seen on TV in a long time. For real. And like and him stepping into that role as the captain and saying like, look, I'm not going to accept your resignation. And like the speech that he gave her was really gorgeous and really heartfelt. And I was like very impressed, not just with the character, but with the writing of the show in general at that point. So I totally agree. I think he's been a great character in the show. And if you have more, Craig, jump in.
And I would just say, too, I mean, he made a very strong choice in two things, he being Seth MacFarlane. He, as you've already said, he made this guy vulnerable. In fact, he made it to where he's not the cream of the crop. He was about ready to get booted out on his ass, and this is his last chance.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, this is not a ship of the line. This is a small exploratory vessel that he's been given as basically no one else could take this ship. We got 1,000 ships, and we don't have enough captains, so you're getting it. And that sets us up to realize this guy is a schmuck, and that makes it work.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, he's building. I mean, the character arc that he has set Mercer on is great. It almost strikes me as what, and I'm going to complain about Star Trek again, unfortunately, but it strikes me of what Scott Bakula's character in Enterprise, Captain Archer, was supposed to be, where he was kind of learning as he went because he was the first captain on a long-range mission. But the problem was the first couple seasons, they wrote Archer as such an nincompoop that you never really felt that he was growing. Mercer's had more growth in 10 episodes than Archer had in 2 seasons. Now, season 3 and 4 got better, but that's, he's learning from past mistakes of other shows.
Well, and I dare say that, like, that's part of the show itself, too, because as a guy who's a schmuck who gets handed a ship because no one else was available to better qualified or better trusted, what was it, by episode 4 or 5, the Krill episode, 6, I guess it was, somebody has apparently taken a liking to him because they set him up to go up against what is essentially the Klingons to the Federation, or the primary antagonists of the show on this super critical intelligence gathering mission. So, I mean, as much as I'm not sure how much we're supposed to drill into some of this type of stuff or not, it seems like, obviously other people were taking note that Mercer had some substance to him.
Yeah.
And really, Mercer for me is kind of the tip of the iceberg here, because there's been a lot of good character growth with many of the characters in the show. I do also really like Isaac. I think the episode where he was taking care of the doctor's kids was really a really cool, really neat episode. I thought
when he held the kid's hand at the end, I was like, yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing a lot of growth with Alara also, as
yes.
And getting more of her backstory as far as, her parents really not approving of her choice of job in the last episode, but also having to find her self-confidence to step into that role.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to take it a different direction. I'll wait till your comment.
Well, I was just going to kind of add a couple other things that I really like about this show. As we've already kind of mentioned, it doesn't pull punches. It's giving us some really hard sci-fi, believe it or not. I loved, and this is probably one of my favorite episodes so far, and that is If the Stars Should Appear, where they find the generation ship. There is some really hard sci-fi in that. And at the end, when they open up the dome and these guys see space for the first time in 2,000 years, and they see Liam Neeson too, which makes it even better. But you know, the fact that they're really kind of digging deep on some of these stories to where it's almost an anthology series, much like Twilight Zone. The fact that you're getting some really good story beats with these characters always intertwined in them. But the other thing too with not pulling punches is the episode Krill, where you get the Krill kid, who obviously is what they want. They want to have this generation realize there's more than just war and religious doctrine, and let's reach out and learn about this other culture. Let's find out where Earth is. Let's see what they want to do. Let's see what they're like and see if we can actually cohabitate. But at the end of the episode, they basically say they've made him into somebody who is going to be hardline, because the first experience he had with Earthlings was not, his entire family and parents and whatever got killed.
Uh-huh.
So this show has some balls, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so we've been gushing over the show. I do want to mention that I thought that the Black Mirror clone episode was garbage. The one where like people would give people a thumbs up. It was just like way too preachy.
It was a bit on the nose.
It literally was a clone of a pretty well done Black Mirror episode. That has Bryce Dallas Howard in it. I think it's in like the first or second season.
Community did it first. And I think South Park might have did it before that.
That's true. That's true. But, it's like that episode, I mean, you're going to, in the first 10 episodes, you're going to have some snoozers or some misses. I would say that the beginning of the series was a bit of a snoozer, and that was just a miss for me. I didn't like that episode at all.
I was going to say, I agree. I mean, you can say as much as that episode felt a little cheesy, a little on the nose or whatever, it also did the very Star Trek thing. It delivered that punch in society's face a little bit, like, hey, look at what's going on. It's more relevant today than it was yesterday.
And they got her to turn off that TV at the end. Like, it was it's always the little touches.
And that's why I actually, believe it or not, I think the episode was ham-fisted. I agree, but I like the message at the end, the fact that they can't change an entire society at a whim. Yes, they saved Tucker, whatever his name is,
Carlson.
Carl, yeah, I'm thinking Tucker from Star Enterprise, but
no, I just said Tucker Carlson.
Oh,
I got that in there.
Yeah.
Son of a bitch! What's his name?
Sorry,
John Lamar. Okay,
yeah.
So they saved Lamar, and they got this one girl to realize there's more out there than that. But at the end of the day, this is still going on, and the idea behind that is it takes baby steps. It takes a few people realizing, tomorrow, and it'll be released here in a few days, Brandon and I are going to talk about 12 Angry Men. And there is one of the pivotal scenes in 12 Angry Men where the racist guy is just railing about, and finally people just start turning their heads and walking away from him. And that's how you change things.
Yeah.
That's how you change things, is the fact juror number 3 actually is the dad who is the last one to turn. This is juror number 11. No, 10.
I thought the racist was 3.
No, 3 was the dad, that he was pissed that his son, doesn't talk to him anymore, so he wants to kill another kid. I watched it last night. Okay. But so the whole idea there, and the whole idea with this episode of Orville, which I agree was probably one of the weaker ones, but I still like the message, is it's going to take a long time, but how you deal with this is you move past it, you shut it down, you ignore it. You allow it to die a death that it needs to die, and I like that message at the
end. And taking a step back to the writing of the show in general a little bit, I wanted to throw out a point earlier, which was as far as the long drawn out humor, which feels very reminiscent of something I just saw Will Ferrell say on a show about how he likes to try to punish the audience for not responding to the thing he thought was funny. is kind of. Also,
Will Ferrell's been punishing me for years, so I understand.
But it's also kind of how I take the Family Guy jokes. the real long drawn out bits. And I was going to say, I don't think we'll ever see those in the Orville. And if you do look at some of, I'm just thinking of a handful of things that Seth MacFarlane has written, but most notably, I'm thinking of like A Million Ways to Die in the West or something.
Mm-hmm.
Not a great movie. It was entertaining. It had its moments. But that movie was also very much absent of that kind of humor. So I think there's definitely stuff that you say, oh, that's a Seth MacFarlane thing right there for sure. But I don't think we'll see every Seth MacFarlane thing we've ever seen in the past in this.
And there's nothing wrong with having a little bit of humor. I think that
I agree. It's just making sure the humor fits the show, which it initially didn't, and I think it's getting much better at.
Yeah.
I think to Scott's point earlier, I think it was, that probably helped sell the show, putting some of that stuff in the pilot because that's what Fox execs wanted to see. I also have zero doubt that while we're getting to see a bunch of, Star Trek alums making cameos, and we're also getting to see just guys from other random sci-fis. I think Robert Nepper has almost certainly been in Star Trek before this, but I mean, he's a staple of sci-fi these days. We'll see Clancy Brown before too long. I freaking guarantee it.
No, yeah, he'll be a Krill.
Oh yeah, totally. So, but I think the introduction of Charlize Theron, Liam Neeson, Jeffrey Tambor, I don't think those things were accidents either. I think that's Seth MacFarlane calling in some favors and that kind of stuff.
Well,
the
one thing we've kind of always heard about Seth MacFarlane is he's a nice guy. Yeah. He's not a dick. So when people work with him, like Theron and Liam Neeson on A Million Ways to Die in the West, they want to work with him again.
He gets an entourage of loyal people that he likes to hang out with, and they like to hang out with him, and that's cool. And then taking this all the way back to the point that I was trying to make in the beginning was, I think what's kind of interesting to me about the we'll just call it the Facebook episode.
Majority Rule was the name of the episode.
Majority Rule. It makes me feel like when they sat down and started writing the season, that he started with what message do I want to send in this episode?
Mm-hmm.
And now how do I turn that into Star Trek or Orville Trek? And, maybe they didn't quite, do the best job.
You can't bat 1,000. I mean, they're not all
right.
going to be.
But I got to give him mad props because I think that means that he sat down and said, I want to do an episode that's about this. I want to do an episode about the court of public opinion. I think it's relevant and it needs to be done. And here's how we're going to figure out how to do it. And I'm like, you know what? That's the part of the episode that came across, and he came across very well, very poignantly.
Yeah, so, I agree.
So let's.
You said that there's only 2 episodes left in this season.
Yeah, it's a 12 season. It's a 12 episode season.
That's
I think
interesting
Fox
to me too, because just the fact that it is Fox and a network TV, it's kind of refreshing that it's a 12 episode season and not trying to cram 22 to 24 episodes at us.
Yeah, and I think Fox is known for killing shows. The biggest one obviously is Firefly, but they killed Futurama. They killed Family Guy once before it got going again.
Space Above and Beyond.
Yes.
Anyone?
The fact that Space Above and Beyond ends the way it ends still pisses me off.
The biggest insult to viewers.
They're floating into a sun, and you leave me there. I love that show. Okay. But there's way too many TV shows to talk about. But I think Fox was hedging their bets. I think they said, okay, we've got Seth here, who is our go-to guy. He's made some stinkers. Cosmos actually didn't do very well for us, but 12 episodes, we'll give him $24 million or whatever it is and let him play. But the fact they got picked up for a second season says that now Fox is on board. So I'm wondering if it's going to be another short season or if they're going to give him a full run.
I hope that it's a short season because just watching, going back and forth between really enjoying shows on Netflix that are anywhere from 8 to 10 episodes, really liking the whole British television revolution that's kind of going on, that they're having such great TV right now, where basically it's just mini movies. Then I go back and I try to watch a CW show like The Flash or Supergirl, And there are some really great episodes hidden in those 23 episodes, but it's just like one of those where it's almost like the writers are just kind of being taxed too much. So I kind of hope that at some point the networks get that 12 really solid episodes that you can then replay twice, replay every episode or whatever, is better than having just abysmal filler episodes.
Yeah, especially with my feeling that this series is very much written to get a message across per episode, to be very socially conscious, and to do that. I think, you take 12 episodes and try to turn that into 24, it's going to get old fast. And
yeah, and
not going to do a very good job.
I completely agree with you guys. I've said so many times on the discussion with this. That's why I love streaming television, and the fact that streaming allows for shorter chunks, much like British TV has been for forever. And so I agree that I hope it's a more shorter script. The one thing too, I was looking at the ratings. This show has been getting less and less people every time, and we're talking a few 100,000 here, but it started out at 8.6 million viewers, and last episode had 3.32, which is still decent for network television, but it's not something to write home about. So I do think they're probably going to have to do some tinkering either with the show or the lineup, or just where it is on TV schedule, because I don't think it can survive too long with only 3 million viewers. But
that's
I mean,
network TV in general, though. I mean, it's just
great.
really interesting because with streaming being so prevalent, and that's how all of us tend to get our stuff. I mean, I get, I don't like having to pay for CBS All Access, but I understand why they're doing it. You're
going to use it for Big Brother anyway, so be good.
Have they announced the cast yet? I was looking for that. I'm so
I don't
excited
care. I just know you're obsessed with
Brother.
it, so I just know you're obsessed.
Guys, can we do a podcast about it?
Hell no. Not me.
Brother.
I'll totally do one on
Brother. Amazing Race? Or you're in with me?
Oh,
I like Amazing Race. That actually, and the only time I don't like Amazing Race is when they put Big Brother people on it and I want to kill them.
Yeah,
you know what? Go. They're putting Cody and Jessica on from this last season, and it's going to be terrible. Actually, what's going to be great is that Cody's going to kill Jessica because Cody's actually insane.
He is a sociopath. I will give you that.
You see, you watch the show, and it's
I have to. It's plays in my living room. It's either that or walk away, and I'm not going to walk away. So this is the first season I've actually watched, and I hated it because the sociopath was a sociopath.
I love it.
I know you do. Okay, let's wrap things up a little bit with a little bit of discussion on some things where we think this show could improve. Where are some of the areas that we don't like? We've kind of hit on a couple of them already, but with season 2 coming around here next year, what would you tell Seth McFarlane about tweaks that you would make to the show?
That's really tough for me because I didn't like the one episode, and I didn't think it got its kicks at the beginning. But I really love the character development that's going and learning these new people. So I would say maybe expand that to some of the other crew members, bring in some of the other people that are typically on the ship, and because I just like to hear their stories too. I mean, that's kind of the nice part about this is that you could explore individuals that maybe are off the beaten path a little bit.
Yeah, well, and I'm still waiting for an episode to focus more heavily on like Malloy. I mean, he's like the second character we meet in the show, but I still don't really honestly care for him because I feel like he's only there for the one ill-placed joke per episode.
Yeah,
although getting his leg amputated was pretty funny.
That was amazing. But he's been coined as kind of like the idiot. So whenever you need somebody to say something stupid, that's him.
And Lamar, that's gonna get he kind of had a starring role in that Facebook Black Mirror episode, and I don't think the way his character came off was very good.
I don't know. I love it when they tell him that you're going to get your mind wiped, and immediately he turns and goes, "I'm a spaceman." We can't break the Prime Directive or whatever they call him this one, but no, I'm a spaceman.
Yeah, but I totally agree. I think there are other characters that we've seen a bit more of, including gelatinous Norm Macdonald. Who, even him, I'm like, that was the dumbest thing I ever saw when I first saw it, and I realized who it was. But in even the most recent episode, I was kind of like, okay, you know, they could focus on Yaphet a little bit more and make him a real character.
I'm a big Hollywood Babylon guy, so give the bartender Ralph Garman some more.
There you go.
Some more scenes. Although it's hilarious that they completely covered up, like you wouldn't know it's Ralph Garman unless like you listen to Hollywood Babylon because they completely covered him up.
You know, it's another really funny one. This just kind of occurred to me was there's been a guy. You know, it's always the characters that, as you said, you see him in the background, and you know they're there and they're reoccurring, but like, you know, they're never the star or whatever. And we've talked about with Discovery how like there are all these people on the bridge crew who we know we've seen them in every episode, and we don't know any of their names.
Yeah.
And then there's a guy. It's one of the nurses in the medical part.
The one that got killed last episode, but not.
Well, you know what? And that's what I was going to say is yes, Nurse Park. Gets killed in the last episode, or so we thought. I was actually legitimately sad. I was like, we're not going to see Nurse Park anymore. Like, that's a drag. And I was really relieved when it turned out it was all a simulation at the end. I'm like, okay, good.
You know,
and I'm like, but that's the mark of a good show, isn't it? I mean,
yes, it is. And that's we've complained about this with Discovery so much, and you just said it. I don't know who anyone is on the bridge crew. I don't. When Mudd is killing them, I don't. Even Mudd makes fun of it. He says, "Nondescript communications guy." I mean,
yeah,
we don't know who these people are. One of the things I think we said when we were talking about Discovery several episodes ago, somebody mentioned, "Well, I really hope we get an Isaac episode because I don't know. I think Isaac. I think it was actually you, Mike. We've gotten 2 Isaac episodes already.
Yeah. Yep.
So actually kind of 3 if you count Firestorm. He was kind of creepy in that one too. But yeah, I mean, they're doing quite a bit right. Creeper said the one thing he would change is fix the lighting a little bit. It's a little too TNG on the lighting. He did say that Firestorm was the best one so far because it had a lot of mood lighting, but that it's a little too bright.
I was just thinking about this. You know, we kept saying that they don't beat a dead horse with the jokes. It just popped in my head. What about the elevator guy? How'd you all feel about him?
I liked it.
Okay.
I liked it.
That's kind of like beating a dead horse, but
it was a fun horse to beat.
Yeah, it wasn't quite this. It wasn't as bad as the typical Family Guy running.
Yeah. All right. I just wanted to. I feel like much like every podcast I'm on, I'm always so like positive about things that people will be like, "Oh, this guy's just a shrill like." It's McFarlane with a D here, not an E, so I don't have any of that Seth money. But you know, I just want to make sure that at least we pointed it out before someone else did that they did have one of those reoccurring kind of maybe overplayed jokes.
Yeah. I mean, I also like the tongue-in-cheek of that one where Mercer actually says, "Do you?" Or maybe it was Kelly. "Do you do anything but ride the elevator?"
Yeah. Yep. Well, I guess we're still doing this. I'm also kind of struggling with what I would change about it. I mean, I think we've hit the nail on the head with like the humor stuff. I want them to lose the lowbrow humor and be a little bit sharper, more clever, more witty. Not, you know, so many shows these days target the lowest common denominator for the joke telling. And I'm sick of it, and I honestly think this show is already fixing that problem. So I want him to keep fixing that problem.
I completely agree with you, but I also see the humor as a gateway. We're going to watch the show for the hard sci-fi and the fun ideas, but hopefully it gets some of those people who would not usually watch a show like this, who are not going to go out and watch Discovery, to kind of understand what these shows have to offer.
Totally. And it's the same thing with the celebrity cameos and stuff, too. They've got to do stuff to reel people in because, I mean, let's face it, if you put TNG on the air today, it wouldn't fly. And I mean, this show is so powerfully TNG inspired that I'm kind of surprised it got a season 2, quite frankly. But that, again, speaks to the strength of the show itself right now.
Well, and that's really the one thing I think I would change is I wanted to go away from TNG a little more. TNG, for me, especially after I've rewatched it, I mean, it's going to have a special place in my heart because it's the first show I watched for the most part all the way through on TV. DS9 was really the first one. So, but when I rewatched TNG, because it always pulled its punches, I don't really care for it anymore. I mean, I care for Picard and all of that, but I don't need to watch TNG episodes all the time because there's not much to them, and I know no matter what happens the next episode, it's all going to get reset anyway. So I'm hoping that these guys start following through on some of the threads they've left bare. One of the big ones is Charlize Theron's episode, Priya, where she points out, you all were supposed to be dead. And they didn't disagree with that. Mercer said, well, we're going to chart our own path. What does that mean? What does it mean that you have this ship in the timeline that isn't supposed to be there? Let's follow up on that. The Krill. Let's follow up on what happens now that the Union has literally killed an entire crew of Krill. Krill. I mean, I want to continue that serialization a little bit. You don't have to go a full season about one story, but start following through on some of this stuff, which I think they're going to do.
I get your point too. I could totally see it getting a little bit away from TNG and starting to do its own thing at the same time, maintaining the very, Star Trek-y feel of the show. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to get full serialized, but I definitely can see it. I mean, and other past Trek series have been pretty good at this. DS9 especially. I mean, you had the serialization, but you also had standalone episodes that were written to fulfill a purpose.
Yeah, and again, I agree with you, and I'm not saying I want to go hard up. I don't want to see the Krill Union War. I just want to see them kind of follow through on some of this stuff. Which, again, I've already said they have the balls to make these hard decisions at the end of the episode. So follow through on that in season 2.
I just can't wait until in season 2, Seth MacFarlane brings on some big old slug on his ship. Just to make fun of Discoveries in this first season, because it's going to happen.
That would not surprise me.
Well, that's the thing, too. I mean, I don't know when this show's production wrapped. I do know that Discovery wrapped production almost immediately after the first episode aired. So Discovery, aside from editing, is not going to change anything based on fan reaction. And so, actually, it looks like episode 13 wrapped on November 15th. That's not right.
Wow.
No, that's not right.
Could have been reshoots, I guess.
Oh, okay. No, what I'm reading here is there was actually a 13th episode, and it's being held back until season 2. So this was originally a 13-episode run, and they're holding back episode 13.
Orville or Discovery?
Orville.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're holding back the last episode until season 2. So I don't see on here where the production ended, but I bet it's going to be the same way in the fact that they probably produced all this stuff before it hit. So you won't see like the reaction to Discovery or to the fan reaction to this show until season 2. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do there.
Yeah. Okay.
And as I was reading this too, we mentioned, the anthology type piece of this and going back to the different stories. And actually, I'm reading an article now where it says McFarlane said Orville was inspired by both Star Trek but also The Twilight Zone, which makes a lot of sense to me. And it goes back to, Mike, what you were saying is he wants to tell a story, and then he'll wrap the Orville into that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and wrap things up a little bit. I want to do 2 things. I want to see where you would rank Orville amongst the Star Trek franchise, because in my head canon it is Star Trek. And I also want to find out what your favorite episode was so far. And I think you may have already hit on that, a couple of you, or maybe all of us, but let's do that. So where would you rank this amongst the franchise? And what was your favorite episode so far? And then we'll wrap it up.
Craig, you go first.
What? Come on. No, so I'll go first on ranking, and then you go first on best episode.
Okay.
So my ranking, I'm a TNG guy, and I haven't. It's been a long time since I watched DS9, and I know that Scott, that's like your love child.
Me and Cisco.
And I've only seen bits and pieces of Voyager, although my friend contends it's the best Star Trek.
Your friend is a fool.
And of course, I've seen all of the original series. So I would say, it's hard because it's only had 10 episodes. I I would say that right now it's solidly in the middle of the pack and could be just as good as what I would consider best of both worlds, Yesterday's Enterprise, stuff like that from TNG. And that's what I hope it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
Can I cop out and just say I agree with Craig?
Craig hasn't told me his favorite episode yet either.
Oh, I was
No,
supposed to
I
go
was going to
first.
make Mike go first.
Oh, you jerk.
Firestorm is my favorite. You know what? Actually, I'm going to change my mind on that. Firestorm is a super good episode, but I actually think I like the Krill episode the best.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It was really, really sharp.
Yeah, I agree. I like it's tough for me to think about which one I like the most so far. But I would say it was probably the one with Isaac and the kids. Because
Into the fold.
I really enjoyed his humanity there, and I liked that the doctor looked like she was such a badass throughout the whole thing. So I'd probably say that.
And Mike, where would you put this in the franchise?
Man.
He said he agreed with me.
I agree with you, Craig.
Okay. Well, for me, you guys mentioned some really good ones. Krill is a very good episode, and for the reasons we already discussed. As I mentioned, I really liked If the Stars Should Appear because it felt like the most Star Trek-y episode to me.
I thought you would love that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's also very Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov, and it's very hard sci-fi.
Very much.
But I'm going to say About a Girl, which is the third episode, and that was the gender change. Not so much for the episode itself, but for on the third episode of this series, them again saying, we're not going to take the easy way out. Sometimes our guys are going to lose, and sometimes we're going to make the decision that everyone knows is wrong. And if we were trying to tell a story where we all have to be, the perfect humans of the 23rd, 24th century, this wouldn't happen. But that's not this show. And I think it's set the path for this show to be able to not pull punches like Discovery's pull.
You make a good point because one of my biggest complaints, the only other show I've really started this season that's new is The Good Doctor. And my complaint about that show is it's almost like he's this autistic surgeon that's also a superhero because he can save everyone's life regardless of XYZ disease. It's just like...
So he's House.
Yeah, basically. I almost want, like I was telling Anna, I was like, I like this show, but I almost want him to have someone die on him. And that seems morbid, but it's a TV show, so what the hell? But, it's like you want to see those human elements, and Orville's doing a good job of that. And also, like you said, not always having the team come out on top.
Yeah. And go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say that episode was the turning point at number 3 for the whole rest of the season. And I distinctly remember sitting on the couch. I marathoned like the first 3 of them in one night. And I was just kind of like, meh, I don't know if I'm going to keep going with this. Holy crap. And I think I actually texted you about it, like right as the episode was ending. I was so like dumbstruck by the fact that they were actually going to that place.
I remember that conversation because halfway through the episode, you were basically talking to me about and then I said, just wait for the end. Yeah. And then
and I was like, wow, they did it.
And for me on the franchise side of things, as much as we've beat up on Discovery today, I still think Discovery is the strongest first season of a Star Trek show that we've had. But Orville has been very strong too, as we've already just discussed. As I already mentioned, TNG doesn't hold as much for me as it used to. So Deep Space Nine will always be my top show. Craig, you're right. It is my love child. One of these days, I'm going to make you actually watch the whole series because it's damn good. But before we do that, we're going to make you watch Babylon 5. Okay. That's creepy. Thanks for that. And I'm going to say it's probably, if I had to rank them, I would put it in the 3 or 4 spot underneath DS9, TOS, and maybe I guess TNG. So, I mean, it's right there. It's right in the middle with you guys, but I think it has a lot of room to grow. And I think Discovery has a lot of room to grow too. I'm just hoping that Discovery learns some lessons from the Seth McFarlane show, which is odd to say.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and wrap things up here. Craig, you want to do the plugging?
Sure. You can find us at thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. Sorry, I kind of have sinusy issues. Thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. Yes, it is a mouthful. We've got some great shows that have been posted there. I've been saying this every show I'm on this month. I interviewed an Academy Award winner at the beginning of this month. And you need to go listen to that episode because they both all of those interviews from the Lincoln Film Festival. They gave great insights into the process, into their careers, and into a Goofy movie. So gotta love that. We've got December coming up, so lots of really amazing Christmas movies that I know are going to be discussed. On Beyond the Mouse, we're going to do The Santa Claus with the Tim Allen wonderful The Santa Claus. I also know that Brandon Davis is planning on doing Meet Me in St. Louis. Scott, what are you guys doing for flashbacks?
Flashbacks, actually, in a few days, we're going to be dropping Planes, Trains, and Automobiles for Thanksgiving. And then also Brandon and I are going to be recording, as I mentioned, 12 Angry Men, which will be dropping here around Thanksgiving time, too. And then December, because the atrociously looking Jumanji film is coming out.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk Jumanji, the real one, with Robin Williams.
Nice. That's awesome. So we got a lot of great content coming up. Also, some potential changes coming down the pike. And
we ever pull the trigger? We're almost there.
We just thank you for checking us out on YouTube if you're watching us live, but also make sure to go over to the podcast feed because there's certain episodes that you can't get there. Likewise, there's certain episodes on YouTube that you can't get on the podcast feed. So you just got to follow us everywhere.
Follow us everywhere. And for this show, we are still dealing with the Discovery hiatus until January 7th. I have an idea for probably 2 more shows, and I'm going to work with the guys and also Blake and Kevin to see what we can do. But I really want to talk about the other Star Trek shows. And I think I just want to kind of talk about what we like about Star Trek in terms of our favorite episodes from the franchise. So we'll be having that come up. Maybe not next week, maybe so. We'll figure it out. But between now and January 7th, you can expect to have at least a couple more shows.
We'll be here talking about something.
Yes, we'll be here talking about
next
something.
Week.
Okay, Mike says next week, so we'll do it next week.
Okay.
See, that's what happens when you speak up. We do it. And be sure to shoot us an email at thefrontrowmoviereviews@gmail.com with your feedback, and leave feedback here in the comments on YouTube and reviews in the podcast, as Craig has mentioned. And we just really enjoy talking to you. Creeper, it's always good to have you in the chat room. Come back next time, please, 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 please. And until next time, we will. I don't know what to say. We'll Quantum Drive. I don't know. Bye. Oh, and I have been Scott, and with me has been
Mike.
I'm Craig.
And see you out there. Bye-bye.
See you in the stars.
Ooh.